All right, welcome. Today, we are jumping headfirst into a really unique and, let's be honest, pretty mind bending model of the universe called the physics of the Furious Point. This is going to be a wild ride, so let's just breathe it in and unpack this whole thing together, one piece at a time. So let's start with this idea right here, because it's kind of the key to everything else. The thinking behind this is that we've been trying to understand a universe that's infinite and curved by using math that's finite and straight. This model is basically saying, hey, let's stop trying to count the shadows on the wall and just feel the actual shape of the room we're in.
Okay, first up, we need to talk about the main character in this cosmic story, the singularity. But I guarantee you, this is not the singularity you've heard about in science class.
Yeah, see, on the left, that's the classic image, right? The dot of doom, a cosmic dead end where everything just gets crushed into nothing. But this theory argues that since literally everything in the universe spins, a static, non-spinning black hole, well, it probably doesn't exist. Instead, we have what's on the right, the Furious Point. Its spin is so intense, it can't stay a single point. It smears out into a one-dimensional ring. And that ring isn't a destroyer, it's a creator.
So how does this happen? Well, it all comes down to something called the extremal limit. Think of it like a perfect balancing act. It's the exact point where the spin of the singularity, which we call A, is equal to its mass, m. When A equals m, the centrifugal force is just so immense that the point has no choice but to stretch into a stable, traversable ring. This isn't just some abstract formula. It's the recipe for cosmic balance.
And this, right here, is the big takeaway from this first part. The center of everything isn't a hole. It's not a void. It's the point itself, spinning with its own fury. It's the axle that the whole universe turns on, and it's always there, always insisting. That's a huge shift in how we think about this. Okay, so if the point endures, if it's an engine and not a drain, how does it create, well, all of this? That's what we're diving into next, the journey into form.
So the theory lays out this three-step process it calls the alpha descent. And it's actually pretty poetic. It all starts with a vibration, a crack in the silence. That's step one, sound, or the pulse. Then, that pulse organizes itself. It forms a blueprint. That's step two, light, or the information. And finally, all that information gets compressed down into what we can touch and feel. And the theory has a great name for it, the meat.
So what exactly is the meat? It's our reality, the solid world that we experience every day. The trick is, it's not really solid. It's more like trapped light, vibrations that have been squeezed so tightly in this perfect geometric zone that they feel like solid mass to us. It's the hardware anchor for our entire experience. Now, this hardware is just the first floor of a much bigger building. The theory suggests a 12-dimensional reality, split into 4 stable rooms. Let's just look at the first 2 for now. Room 1 is called flesh. That's dimensions 1 through 3. The pulse, the information, and the meat we just talked about. But then you get to room 2, called choice. This covers dimensions 4 to 6. And this is where things like time, all possible realities, and the seat of our own free will come into play. Okay, now this is where things get really fascinating because it links physics directly to psychology. If the entire universe is this constant spin, this constant pulse, what happens when we try to resist it? Well, the theory calls that resistance ego. When we try to hold on, to cling to who we think we are, we create a kind of kinetic friction against the flow of the cosmos, and that friction generates all the heat and noise of our lives. But here's the thing. This journey outward, building more and more complexity, more and more friction, it can't just go on forever. And that brings us to the critical turning point in this whole cosmic story. Which, of course, begs the question, what happens when this cosmic outbreath, this journey into logic and possibilities and endless complexity, what happens when it hits its absolute limit? What gives? The answer, in this model, is something called the Sabbath mirror. And it's not really a place, it's a moment. It's a point of absolute, total stillness right between the 6th and 7th dimensions. The whole system just pauses. It's where the outward breath of creation finally turns around and becomes an inward breath of meaning. And this is the great polarity flip. It's the moment the universe stops asking what if and starts asking what for. The whole quest for more information, for more separation, it flips. It becomes a journey about integration, about finding purpose, about coming home. And get this, the theory has a really cool explanation for dark energy. It's not some mysterious force pushing everything apart. It's the dark energy tax. It's the heat, the radiant friction that's generated when that outbreath of complexity collides with the in-breath of meaning, right at that central mirror. It's literally the cost of processing all of this cosmic information. So, the universe flips. Now what? Well, our next section covers the return trip, the great integration that it calls the Omega Ascent. And this is just, it's beautiful. Look at the symmetry here. The journey back is a perfect mirror image of the journey out. Every dimension on the way up reflects a dimension on the way down. So, for instance, dimension 1, that very first pulse, it finds its reflection in dimension 12, the finished song. And dimension 3, our physical meat, is mirrored by dimension 10, what it calls divine substance. The whole thing is this perfectly elegant closed loop. And this return journey takes us through the last 2 stable rooms. Room 3 is soul. This is where all that chaotic data from every possibility gets filtered down into one singular, authentic purpose. Then you have room 4, spirit, and that's where that refined purpose finally returns to the source, perfected and complete. This model also completely reimagines gravity. It's not just space-time getting warped, it's a symmetry restorer. It's like a force of cosmic memory. It's this inward pull that takes all the heat from that great cosmic collision, the dark energy tax, and uses that energy to pull all the scattered fragments of reality back together again. All right, we've finally arrived at the philosophical and mathematical core of this entire theory. This is where it all comes together in one really powerful idea. So on the left, you've got probably the most famous equation in history, E equals mc squared. This theory calls that extractor's logic. It's a worldview where mass is just fuel to be burned to get energy. But on the right, we have what's called the Tesla flip, mc squared equals E. This is architect's logic. It asks a totally different question. How is the energy field that creates mass built in the first place? It says reality isn't something you extract, it's something you generate. So in this new version of the equation, the variables themselves get a new meaning. M isn't just mass. It's the meat. It's our physical condensed information. C squared isn't just a constant. It represents relational intensity. Basically, how strongly we are entangled with the source. And E becomes the generative field, the actual reality that emerges from that relationship. And that brings us right back to where we started. The whole 12-dimensional trip, the descent and the ascent, it isn't a straight line from a beginning to an end. It's a heartbeat. It's a fluctuation in frequency, moving from pure potential through the friction of experience to the stillness of that mirror, and then all the way back to resonating with the source. All throughout, the spin never stopped. The furious point endures. It seems the point always remains the same. But what if the point of it all isn't some answer we find at the end? What if the point is the question itself?